My parents called it a temporary arrangement. 2 months, maybe 3. They said Blackwood Boarding School had a reputation for excellence. I said it looked like a castle that had been dropped out of the sky and forgotten. They said I was being dramatic. I said, "You're sending me away." They said, "We're giving you an opportunity." I didn't argue, because honestly, when your parents pack your bags without asking, you stop wasting breath on arguments. You just go. You survive. That was the plan anyway. I arrived on a rainy Tuesday, the kind of cold that gets under your hoodie and settles in your bones. The headmaster gave me a quick tour, never once making eye contact. The other kids barely noticed me. I was invisible, except to the building. Because the moment I walked past the 3rd floor dorm wing, the lights flickered. And the number on my assigned door glitched. It read 404. The headmaster frowned, then smiled tightly. "Strange," he said. "That room's been empty for a while." He handed me the key anyway. Later that night, when I unpacked, I found something taped under the desk. A torn piece of lined paper, written in pencil, shaky, rushed. It said, "If you're reading this, don't stay here. Don't sleep. Don't trust the mirror. And whatever you do, don't answer the knock at 4:04 a.m. I read it twice, laughed a little, then tossed it in the trash. I wish I hadn't, because that night, at exactly 4:04 a.m., someone knocked, and when I looked in the mirror, I wasn't the one staring back. It's... "Don't stay in room 404. I didn't want to go to boarding school. In fact, if I had my way, I'd be sitting on the couch back home in Detroit, playing video games with my best friend Marcus and eating stale cheese puffs I dropped under the cushions 2 days ago. But nope. Instead, I was in the back seat of a rental car, watching fog roll through a forest that looked like it had been ripped from a vampire movie. Tall, jagged trees bent toward the road like they were whispering secrets to each other. Every so often, we'd pass a broken sign or a mailbox half swallowed by weeds. "Is this even a real place?" I asked my mom. She didn't look up from the GPS. "It's on the map. Barely." My dad, who was driving, forced a cheerful voice. "Come on, Jayson, it'll be good for you. New place, new people, new opportunities." Right. Like getting dropped off in the middle of nowhere at a 100-year-old school, surrounded by creepy woods, was the perfect opportunity. For what? Getting eaten by werewolves? I didn't say anything. I just stared out the window and watched the trees grow thicker and darker. 30 minutes later, we finally pulled up to the gates of Blackwood Boarding School. The building itself looked like a castle that had been abandoned and then decided, I'll try one more semester. It had ivy crawling up its stone walls, narrow arched windows, and a bell tower that loomed like it was watching us. "Wow," Mom said, stepping out of the car. "It's beautiful." I stepped out after her and immediately felt a chill. The air smelled like old leaves and wet stone. The sky was grey, the kind of grey that made everything feel 2 shades darker than it should. "Looks haunted," I muttered. Dad chuckled. "Don't be dramatic." As if on cue, the bell tower rang. The sound echoed across the grounds, loud, deep, and a little off, like the bell was rusty or cracked. "Let's check in," Mom said, grabbing my duffel bag before I could. "Great, let's." The main office was inside a side building that looked newer than the rest. Kind of. The walls were lined with dark wood panels, and the floor creaked every time someone took a step. Behind the front desk sat a woman with round glasses and her hair tied back in a tight bun. She looked up and smiled politely when we entered. "Name?" she asked. "Jayson Mills," my mom answered for me. The woman typed something on her ancient-looking computer. The screen made a buzzing sound. She frowned. "Oh," she said, blinking twice. "That's strange." "What's strange?" Dad asked. She tapped the keyboard again. "Room assignment. It says here he's been placed in room 404. My mom nodded. "Okay, and?" The woman hesitated. "That room was," she began, but then stopped. "Never mind. Must be a system glitch. But that's what it says, so room 404. She slid me a key on an old-fashioned metal tag. "Top floor, end of the hall, take the east stairwell, it's faster." I took the key and held it in my palm. It felt cold, like it had been sitting in a freezer. Do you get many kids in that room?" I asked. The woman looked up sharply. "No," she said, "we don't." A few hours later, my parents were gone. They gave me hugs, told me to call every weekend, and promised I'd make new friends in no time. I stood in the middle of my new room and looked around. Room 404. Honestly, it didn't look that weird. It was a little dusty and had that no one's been here in a while smell, like old books and rain. There was a small bed, a dresser, a desk, and a closet door that creaked every time the wind blew through the window crack. Still, I had to admit, it wasn't terrible. I dropped my bag on the bed and looked at the walls. Someone had scratched a name into the corner by the window. The letters were faded, but I could still read them. LT. "Who's LT?" I mumbled out loud. No answer. Obviously. The radiator clanked. I jumped. "Get it together, Jayson," I told myself. It's just an old room, not a horror movie. I set up my stuff, pulled out my sketchbook, and tried to draw. But the whole time I kept glancing over at the closet. It hadn't moved. It hadn't creaked. But I still felt like something was in there, watching. That night I had the weirdest dream. I was walking through the hallway of the school, but everything was dark. The walls were covered in vines, doors were missing, the floor groaned under my feet like it didn't want to hold me. And then I reached my door. Room 404. But when I opened it, there was no room. Just a brick wall, and carved into the wall, deep and fresh, were the words, "Don't stay here." I turned around in the dream, and something was there. Not a person, not a shadow, something in between. It raised a hand and pointed at me. And then, bang, bang, bang. I woke up gasping. The closet door had slammed open on its own. I stared at the closet door. It had slammed open. I was sure of it. I didn't touch it. I hadn't gotten up. I was lying right in bed, staring at the ceiling. thinking about that weird dream. And then bang! It flew open like someone had kicked it from the inside. I sat up slowly, heart thudding in my chest. The closet door swayed slightly, just a little, like it was breathing. I waited, listened. Nothing. No footsteps, no wind, no voices. Still. I got out of bed and crept over. Each step felt like it echoed louder than it should. The air in the room had gone colder too, like someone had cracked open a freezer. I stood in front of the closet and reached for the door. I took a deep breath, and I slammed it shut. Then I shoved a chair in front of it. That should keep any raccoons or ghosts or whatever out, right? I glanced at the clock on my desk. 4:04 a.m. Weird. By morning, the room felt normal again. Kind of. The sunlight poured through the window, washing away most of the creepy feelings from last night. The closet stayed shut. My clothes didn't move. The radiator clanked cheerfully like it always had. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just the wind. Or a draft. Or, maybe my nerves were just getting the better of me. First night in a new place. Totally normal to be freaked out, right? Still, when I stepped into the hallway, I noticed something strange. All the doors on my floor had name tags, except mine. Room 404 was the only door without a name, and I could have sworn the other students walking past avoided looking at it. Or at me. One kid even whispered, "Is he in the room?" to his friend. The other one nodded. Then they both looked away quickly and sped up. Okay, not weird at all. At breakfast, I met Caleb. He sat next to me in the dining hall with a tray stacked with pancakes and something green I hoped wasn't meat. "New kid," he said casually, shoveling syrup onto everything. "Room 404, right?" I blinked. Yeah. How'd you know?" "Everyone knows. Nobody's been in that room for years." I paused. "Why not?" He chewed thoughtfully. "They say it's haunted." I raised an eyebrow. "Come on, really?" He shrugged. "It's just what people say. Someone disappeared there. Kid named Lucas something. Like 5 or 6 years ago. After that, they sealed the room. Or tried to. But I guess they ran out of space this semester or something." My stomach turned. Lucas. LT. I remembered the carved initials by the window. "You believe that?" I asked. Caleb grinned. "Nah. But I wouldn't sleep there either." Classes started after breakfast. Math, science, history, all the usual suspects. Blackwood was old school in every sense. The classrooms had chalkboards. The desks squeaked. The teachers acted like the year was 1925 instead of 2025. Most of the students were polite, but distant, like they were watching me too closely, especially one girl named Ivy. She sat 2 rows behind me in English and never stopped staring. Not in a, "Hi, I'm friendly" kind of way. More like she was waiting for me to do something. Or waiting for something to happen to me. I tried to ignore it. But when I opened my locker between classes, a folded note fluttered out. I looked around. No one seemed to notice. I picked it up and unfolded it. In thick black ink, written in blocky handwriting. "Don't stay past the 3rd night. That's when it gets stronger." There was no name, just that message. I stuffed it into my pocket and tried not to panic. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the wall made me jump. Every shadow looked darker than it should. The closet stayed shut, but the air felt wrong, like something was hiding just under the surface. At exactly 4:04 a.m., the radiator hissed loudly and then stopped. Total silence. Then I heard it. Scratch. Scratch. Tap. It came from inside the wall. I held my breath. Scratch. Scratch. Tap. Then a voice. Faint. Hoarse. Whispering right through the plaster. Help. Me. I bolted out of bed. Threw open the closet. Nothing inside. But the wall behind the closet. It had a tiny crack in it, barely visible in the moonlight, and scratched just under that crack, barely readable. I'm still here. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I just lay there in the dark, wide-eyed, staring at the ceiling, listening, waiting. But the scratching never came back. Neither did the whisper. At exactly 6 a.m., the radiator hissed again, and the normal sounds of the school began to return. Footsteps, voices in the hallway, water running in nearby bathrooms, as if nothing had happened, as if the wall hadn't whispered to me at all. I skipped breakfast. I couldn't eat. Instead, I found myself in the library after first period, pretending to browse the ancient encyclopedias while sneaking glances at the school map pinned on the wall. The 4th floor only had a handful of rooms, mostly storage, and room 404. I traced my finger over the floor plan. There it was, in the corner, almost like it had been squeezed in as an afterthought. And something was off. The room looked smaller on the map than in real life. Way smaller. Looking for something? I jumped. It was Ivy. She stood behind me, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Just curious, I said. About your room? She asked. I hesitated. How did you... Everyone knows. You're the first one to stay in 404 since Lucas disappeared. There it was again. That name, Lucas. I tried to sound casual. What happened to him? Ivy looked around. Then she lowered her voice. They say he went into the walls. I blinked. Into the walls? She nodded. One night he started hearing things. Scratching, tapping. He told people, but no one believed him. Said he saw a crack in the closet wall. The next morning, he was gone. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. I found something, I said, in the closet. A crack, a message. Ivy's eyes widened. You saw it too? I opened my mouth to answer. And the librarian cleared her throat loudly from across the room. No whispering in the reading section. We both jumped. Ivy grabbed my sleeve and pulled me away. Meet me at lunch. We need to talk. Somewhere private. I nodded. And I realized, for the first time since arriving at Blackwood, I wasn't alone. We met in the old music room. No one used it anymore, and the door didn't lock. Perfect place for a secret meeting. Ivy pulled out a folder from her bag and dumped the contents on the dusty piano. Newspaper clippings, old flyers, a faded photo. Lucas Thorne, she said. He was 13. Everyone says he ran away, but my older brother went to school here then. He told me there were rumors. I picked up the photo. A boy about my age, short black hair, wide grin, standing right in front of Blackwood's bell tower. The headline on one of the articles read, "Student vanishes from dorm room. No evidence found." I scanned the details. The last person to see Lucas, a teacher, said he was acting paranoid, complaining about walls whispering to him. It sounded way too familiar. "He tried to tell people," I said quietly. "So are you," Ivy replied, "and I believe you." I looked at her surprised. "Why?" "Because I stayed in room 404 once, for one night." She paused. "And something scratched my name into the wall. That night, I didn't feel as scared. Still freaked out, sure, but I had Ivy now. Someone who knew I wasn't making it up. Someone who had seen the same things. After lights out, I waited, and waited, and right on schedule, 4:04 a.m., the radiator stopped. The room went silent. I slipped out of bed and crouched in front of the closet. The crack in the wall was still there. This time I brought a flashlight. I shined it into the crack, moving it slowly. Nothing. But then, my foot nudged something under the floorboard. I looked down. One of the boards in the closet floor was loose. I pulled it up, carefully, heart pounding. Inside was a small, flat tin box. I opened it. Inside were folded pieces of paper, a key, and a badge with the name Lucas Thorne, Blackwood Hall Monitor. I unfolded one of the notes. "It watches from the corners. It can't come through unless you let it. But it's patient. It waits until the third night. If you hear it calling, don't answer." Third night? That was tonight. By the time the sun went down, I was shaking. Third night. That's what the note said. The night it comes. Whatever it was. I sat on my bed with the tin box in my lap, reading the notes over and over again. There were 4 in total. All in the same handwriting, Lucas's, I guessed. One talked about the scratching. One warned not to open the closet after midnight. Another mentioned faces in the wall when the moon is full. And the last one? Someone let it in before. That's why it's still here. That's why it needs someone new. I didn't know what any of it meant. But I didn't want to find out the hard way. At dinner, I sat with Ivy again. Caleb waved at me from another table, but I only nodded. "I found something," I whispered. Ivy's eyes lit up. "What?" A tin box under the closet floor. Notes. A key. Lucas's hall monitor badge. She looked stunned. "Can I see it?" I pulled the key out of my pocket and slid it across the table. It was old, iron, shaped like a miniature dagger, heavy. I think it opens something inside the walls. Ivy stared at it like it was cursed, or locks it. Back in my room that evening, I placed the key on the desk, then shut the closet door again. I pushed the dresser in front of it this time, just in case. I couldn't shake the feeling that the room was watching me. Even the mirror above the sink felt wrong, like my reflection moved just a little after I did. I didn't brush my teeth, didn't change into pajamas. I just lay on the bed, fully dressed, flashlight in one hand and the tin box in the other, and waited. The radiator stopped. 4:04 a.m. My eyes snapped open. I must have dozed off. For a second, the room was still. Too still. Then I heard it. Tap, tap, scratch. It came from inside the wall again, but louder this time. I sat up slowly. The closet door hadn't opened yet. But something was different. The air felt thicker, like I was underwater. And then, whispering. Dozens of voices all around me. Let us in. We're cold. It's your turn. Lucas said no, will you? I clutched the flashlight and aimed it at the closet. And then the mirror cracked. Just once. A single hairline fracture across the glass. My reflection stayed still for a moment too long, then smiled. I didn't smile. I bolted. Ran out of the room in bare feet, down the creaking hallway toward the east stairwell. The halls were dark, too dark. Even the emergency lights were off. And just as I reached the top of the stairs, "Where are you going, Jayson?" I froze. It was Mr. Cranby, the dorm supervisor. He stood in the shadows near the stairwell, arms folded. His eyes looked wrong. Too wide, too shiny. "Back to your room," he said, voice flat. There's something in there," I stammered. "The wall. There's something wrong with the wall." Mr. Cranby stepped closer. "I know," he said. "That's why we put you there." Twist unlocked. Jayson's fears weren't in his head. The adults knew about room 404. And someone is helping whatever's inside the walls. "What do you mean you put me there?" I whispered. Mr. Cranby's smile didn't move, but his eyes glinted in the dark like wet glass. "Room 404 needs someone," he said calmly. "Someone fresh, someone the school won't miss." I backed up a step, heart thudding. "You're lying." "Why would I lie?" he asked. "You found the notes. You heard the voices. You felt it watching you." He stepped forward again. "I was like you once," he said. "I heard the scratching too, but I didn't fight it. I joined it." That's when I saw it, his hand. His fingers were grey at the tips, like stone. Like plaster? "Nope," I said, and I ran. I tore down the stairs barefoot, skidding around the corner toward the south wing. Behind me, I heard footsteps, but not fast ones, calm ones. Like he wasn't chasing me. Like he didn't need to. I yanked open the door to the old music room and slammed it behind me. Ivy was already there, waiting, holding her flashlight and my tin box. "I saw him," I gasped. "Cranby, he knows. He put me in that room on purpose." She didn't look surprised. "They're part of it," she said. "Some of the staff. They protect the secret." "What is it?" I asked. "What's in the walls?" She took a breath. "Come with me." We snuck through the back hallway behind the theatre room. It hadn't been used in years. The floor was warped, the walls peeling. "There's something I didn't tell you," Ivy said, leading me down a narrow stairwell. "Lucas wasn't the only one." I stopped. "What?" There were 3 others, decades apart. Always someone in room 404. Always the same signs, scratching, whispering, cracks in the wall. And always someone disappears. She stopped at the bottom step and turned on her flashlight. "We're going into the crawl space." I frowned. "Why?" "Because room 404 isn't the only place it reaches. It's connected through the walls. This whole building is full of hidden tunnels. And Lucas left one more message. We crawled for what felt like forever. The air smelled like mold and dust. Our flashlights caught broken pipes, mouse droppings, old school banners from the 1950s. Finally, we reached a dead end. Ivy pointed. There. Carved into the wood panel was a message scratched over and over again. Don't let them feed it again. And below it, something else. A circle of symbols burned into the wood with a keyhole in the center. My hand went to my pocket. The iron key. Try it, Ivy whispered. I slid the key into the slot. It clicked. The panel creaked open. Behind it was a passage, narrow, dark, and warm. Warm, like breath. Ivy held her flashlight up, and we both gasped. The walls inside weren't made of wood. They were made of faces. Not real ones, molded ones. As if the plaster had remembered every kid it had ever swallowed. Their eyes were closed, their mouths slightly open. It's a prison, I whispered. It's hungry, Ivy said. Then something moved inside the tunnel, fast, whispering. Closer, too close. We turned. Something was coming. I grabbed Ivy's hand and ran. The whispers behind us turned into hissing. Sharp, wet hissing like air escaping from a slit throat. The tunnel narrowed as we moved, the walls squeezing in, the faces brushing against my shoulders like they were trying to wake up. Left! Ivy shouted. We ducked through a broken panel and dropped into a lower passage, darker, colder. My flashlight flickered, then stabilized. Behind us, something slid along the ceiling. A shadow with too many limbs, too many fingers, and no face. We burst through another panel and tumbled into a dark, forgotten boiler room beneath the east wing. Ivy slammed the panel shut and shoved an old mop handle through the brackets. Everything went still, except our breathing. Except the whisper that somehow made it through the wood. You opened the way. We're so hungry. What is that thing? I asked once I could breathe again. I don't know, Ivy said. But it's not just one thing. It's like the school built itself around it. Like it's part of the walls now. Maybe it always was. Then what does it want? She looked down. Us. We searched the boiler room for exits and found another trap door. This one leading up toward the old janitor's closet. But before we climbed, I spotted something in the corner. A small wooden chest, half covered in cobwebs. Inside was a set of old photographs and a journal. The name on the cover? Lucas Thorne. I opened it carefully. The first few pages were filled with notes about classes, teachers, schedules. But halfway through, the writing changed. Messier. Scared. The whispering started again. It knows my name. Mr. Cranby won't help. He smiled when I told him. Smiled. I saw the faces move in the wall. They were screaming. I think I'm next. If anyone finds this, don't trust the staff. They feed it. They always have. I flipped to the very last page. The third night is when it chooses. If you survive the fourth, you belong to it. Forever. Ivy and I climbed back into the janitor's wing and snuck to the library. We needed help, but not from the adults. she whispered, leading me to the back archives. We find the original blueprints of the school. We find where the walls connect. We seal the tunnel from the inside, trap it before it gets stronger. I nodded. And if we find Lucas? She looked at me, grim. Then we get him out. We found the old architectural plans. Dusty, rolled up scrolls behind a fake book spine labelled Plumbing Records. We spread them out on the floor. That's it, I said, pointing. Room 404. See how it doesn't connect to the normal ventilation or duct system. But here, Ivy traced her finger across the map. A secondary shaft, not on the public plans. It runs from the boiler room all the way under the bell tower and ends under the east stairwell, where Mr. Cranby was waiting for you. Then the lights in the library went out. The plans fluttered, and somewhere among the shelves, a voice spoke. Not whispered, spoke. You shouldn't have come this far. Stay quiet, Ivy whispered. We froze between two dusty shelves, surrounded by darkness so thick it felt alive. Somewhere in the room, footsteps creaked across the old wooden floor. Slow, heavy, not barefoot, not human. I held my breath. You shouldn't have come this far. The voice was behind us. No, it was inside the wall. Ivy grabbed my wrist and yanked me between two bookcases. We crawled under a fallen ladder and hid behind the giant globe in the reading corner. The globe started spinning, by itself. My flashlight buzzed, flickered, then dimmed. I think it's using the electricity, I whispered, feeding on it. Ivy nodded, just like the staff, feeding it, keeping it alive. What happens if it finds us? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. We both knew. Suddenly, we heard a different sound, a thud, then a voice, a boy's voice. Jayson? I turned my head. Lucas? The voice came from behind the bookshelf. Don't be scared. I've been watching. I've been trying to help. Ivy shook her head. It's a trick. Don't listen. But something in the voice sounded real. Not like the others, not like the whispering. It sounded tired, afraid. They trapped me, the voice said. In the wall, behind the librarian's office. There's a crack. Please, help me. I looked at Ivy. We have to check, or you'll end up like him. I gritted my teeth. If he's alive, we can't just leave him. We slipped through the dark, following the voice. The footsteps were gone. The globe had stopped spinning. We reached the back of the librarian's office. No one was there. The wall behind the desk was covered in faded wallpaper, and in the center, a long, jagged crack. Just like the one in my closet. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the iron key, and slowly pressed it into the crack. Click. The wall opened. Behind it was a small room. No furniture, just walls covered in chalk writing and handprints. And in the middle, a boy, pale, thin, black hair, wearing an old Blackwood uniform. Lucas Thorne. He looked up at me with wide, exhausted eyes. You found me, he said. Finally. We pulled him out into the hallway. He stumbled, blinking in the light from my flashlight. How long have you been in there? I asked. I don't know, he whispered. Days, weeks. It's always dark, It talks to me. It tells me things. But I didn't let it in. I never did. Ivy looked at the chalk markings inside the chamber. You were keeping it out. He nodded. But now it's angry. A deep rumble shook the walls. The crack behind us sealed itself shut. We turned to run, and the voice louder than any before echoed through the hall. 3 children now. Just enough. We begin. We didn't stop running until we reached the abandoned science wing. No cameras, no staff, just rows of overturned desks, shattered beakers, and chalkboards coated in years of dust. Lucas collapsed onto a bench, breathing hard. I didn't think anyone would ever find me, he said between gasps. I thought I'd disappear like the rest. Rest? I asked. You mean there were others? Lucas nodded, eyes dark. Every few years. Always a kid from room 404. Always one who doesn't know the rules. Ivy knelt in front of him. Tell us everything, now. Lucas leaned against the wall and started speaking slowly, carefully. It's not a ghost. Or a demon. Not exactly. It's older. It came with the land, before the school was built. The founders made a deal. They built Blackwood around it, fed it. Fed it what? I asked, even though I already knew. Us, Lucas said. Fear, pain, confusion. It doesn't want blood. It wants memories, identity. The more scared we are, the more it eats. That's why the walls remember, Ivy whispered. That's why the faces. He nodded. They're not decorations, they're what's left. I felt sick. So, why the teachers? Why Mr. Cranby? Lucas looked me dead in the eyes. Because some people think it gives them power, long life, control. They protect it. Raise kids like pigs in a pen until it's time. I staggered back. That's why they never fixed room 404, I said. It's not broken. It's ready. And now there are 3 of us, Ivy said softly. Just like it said. Lucas pulled something from his pocket. A shard of mirror. I kept this from the bathroom before I disappeared. It shows things, reflections, the entity doesn't like. If we can gather more, we might be able to push it back. Force it out. How? I asked. Lucas's voice lowered. We make it look at itself. We spent the next 2 hours collecting mirror shards, old reflective lab equipment, and anything shiny from the storage closets. Ivy mapped the passageways using the blueprint copy from earlier. We hid it in the crawl space, she said. Trap it there, reflect the light back at it. Will that kill it? I asked. Lucas shook his head. Maybe, or maybe just weaken it long enough for us to seal it. By 3:30 a.m., we were ready. We stood at the hidden door beneath room 404, just like the night it all started. Each of us held flashlights and mirror shards. Lucas's hand trembled, but his eyes were steady. You sure about this? I asked him. No, he replied, but I'm not hiding again. I looked at Ivy. She nodded. Then we opened the door. The walls breathed. The faces moved. And from the dark behind the plaster came the voice. 3 little lights. 3 little fears. Come closer, so I can remember you. The tunnel hissed as we stepped in. This time, it didn't wait. It knew we were coming. The faces along the walls writhed and twisted, eyes fluttering open, mouths moving silently, screaming without sound. Lucas led the way. He moved fast, his flashlight shaking in his hand. "Don't look them in the eyes," he said. "What happens if we do?" I asked. He didn't answer. We reached the chamber at the heart of the crawl space, just under room 404. The walls were bare plaster here, no faces, just smooth grey stone, cold and humming with tension. Ivy placed the mirror shards in a circle, all facing inward. "We draw it here," she said. "We trap it in its own image." "But how do we make it show up?" I asked. Lucas held out his arms. "We speak its name." He stepped into the center of the mirrors and shouted, "I remember you!" Silence. Then, a crack ran through the wall. Another. Then the wall split open like a mouth, and from it spilled smoke, shadow, and something crawling. A figure, shapeless, twitching, built from fragments, childlike arms, lung-twisting legs, pieces of clothing fused into skin. It moved like a broken puppet. Its voice echoed from every wall. "You, remember me. Now I will remember you forever." The lights flickered. Our flashlights buzzed. The entity surged toward Lucas, but he stood firm, holding up the largest mirror shard. The light from Ivy's flashlight hit it at just the right angle. Blinding white light bounced across the mirrors. The creature screamed. It clutched its shifting face, which was suddenly changing, morphing into Ivy's face, then mine, then Lucas's. I felt something pull at my chest, like it was trying to take me. Memories flashed. My room at home, my parents waving goodbye, Marcus laughing beside me on our last game night. I screamed. Ivy grabbed my hand. "Focus! Don't let it in!" Lucas lunged forward with the shard. "You don't get to keep us!" He slammed the mirror into the creature's chest. It shattered. Light exploded. The entity shrieked. Its body cracked like glass, the pieces pulling back into the walls. The crawl space shook. The plaster faces began to weep, their mouths closing, eyes sealing shut. Then, silence. The light faded. The tunnel went still. Lucas collapsed to the floor, gasping. "It's retreating," he whispered. "But not gone. We hurt it. Badly. But we didn't kill it. We sealed it," Ivy said. "That's enough for now." I looked around. The walls were smooth again. Just stone. No faces. No breath. We crawled out just before dawn. When we emerged from the hidden stairwell, the school felt lighter. The air less heavy. The building no longer watching. But I knew it wasn't over. Lucas looked at us both and said, "We've got one more thing to do." The sun had just started rising when we reached the main office. The front desk was empty. No staff. No noise. The building was dead silent, like the school itself had gone to sleep. Lucas walked behind the counter and pulled out the master key ring. "They're gone," he said. "They always vanish after a feeding fails." Ivy nodded. Cowards, parasites. I stared at them both. "So, what now? We shut down the school? Burn the place to the ground?" Lucas shook his head. "We seal room 404. We returned to the 4th floor. Room 404 stood open, its door swinging gently in the breeze. Inside, everything was just like before. My bag still on the bed, the closet slightly ajar, the crack sealed. Only now, the air felt hollow, empty. I stepped in and looked around one last time. The room was just a room. Lucas dropped the key onto the floor and pulled out a tube of industrial sealant. Ivy covered the doorframe in tape marked Hazard Biocontrol. Lucas sealed the edges with fast-drying foam. The door hissed, then stuck shut. For the first time since I arrived, room 404 was truly closed. A week later, the school announced temporary closure due to maintenance. Students were sent home early, no explanations. Just packed bags, confused parents, and a lot of relieved faces. Lucas didn't leave with the others. Neither did Ivy. I stayed behind too. We told the head office we were part of a cleanup team. We weren't. We were watchers, just in case. On our last night in Blackwood, we stood outside room 404, staring at the sealed door. I still hear it sometimes, Ivy said. Me too, Lucas added. But it's muffled now. Distant. I didn't say anything, but I heard it too. Not the voice, not the whispers, the breathing. Soft, slow, like something sleeping. That night, as I lay in my bed in the guest dorm, I got a text message. Unknown number. 404 is quiet now, for you. Then a second message, but not for everyone. And then an image. It was blurry, dark, but I could make out a hallway, a new hallway, at a different school, and a door, with a number on it, 404. 2 months later, Spring Ridge Academy, New Hampshire. Amara Perez stood with her suitcase in the middle of the hallway, staring up at the door in front of her. She was the new kid, again. Her family moved a lot. New cities, new uniforms, new names to remember. She didn't mind it anymore. Being invisible had its perks. But something about this place felt strange. The air smelled old, even though the building was newly renovated. The halls echoed more than they should. The janitor smiled too much. And now she was here, at her dorm. Room assignment 404. The door creaked open without her touching it. Inside, the room was simple. Twin bed, wooden desk, big window, fresh paint, hardwood floor. Nothing unusual. Except the wall across from the bed. There was a hairline crack, barely visible. She dropped her suitcase and walked over, running her fingers along it. The plaster felt cool, too cool. And when she leaned in, she thought she heard breathing. She shook her head. Get a grip, she told herself. She pulled her phone out to text her cousin, just to say she'd arrived. No signal. She glanced back at the wall and froze. Someone had carved something faint, right above the baseboard. Don't stay here. She turned back toward the door, but it had closed and locked. The clock on her nightstand blinked. 4:04 p.m. Then all the lights went out.